Okay, so like I said, this is a revision class, and for very good reasons, I'm not going to revisit everything we've been saying over the past 6 or 7 weeks. That would be a physical impossibility, زي ما احنا عارفين. So what I'm going to do is to first of all reassure you by telling you guys you did an awesome job. You've been doing enough over the past 6 and 7 weeks, and I'm sure you're going to make us proud tomorrow. You're going to ace it. First of all, and this is obviously, I'm not talking to everyone because I know you're self-disciplined and you know what is required of you. And I'm talking to those, sometimes you go blank. I mean, you have some kind of momentary writer's block where you don't feel that you can do enough in a question and you end up leaving it altogether. This is طبعا wrong. Under no circumstances should you leave a question unanswered. Okay, so if you're this is a worst case scenario, by the way, and I shouldn't have started with it because this is negative. Again, don't leave questions unanswered. I'm talking about the required questions because obviously there are choices and you have to leave questions because you shouldn't be answering more than is required. And this is a point that I'll come to in a minute. So there is no such thing that I don't know, or I haven't prepared this aspect of the question. So no matter what, you have to write. Okay. Again, if you're totally blank in one question, write the biography of the author, write the plot. Don't leave the question blank or empty. This is one thing. The other thing is about the required questions. If in the short answers part, for example, we ask you to write on 2, and the choices are 3, don't attempt the 3. Don't do the 3. Okay, so if I ask you to answer 2 out of 3 questions in a certain section, you keep to the 2 questions. What happens if you do the third? We ignore it. And sometimes the third is your best. So we start with the first 2, and one of them might not be your best. So focus on the first 2 and do a good job. Okay, so writing more than is required in terms of the number of questions is and can be very counterproductive. It can backfire. Okay, we ignore whatever is not as per the number that we decided. And it can be very upsetting for the teacher too. What all else about, and I'm talking now about perhaps the format of the exam and how many questions. So judging from previous experience, you normally have, like I said, 3 questions in the first part, in the short answer part, and you're supposed to answer 2. And these are concepts. And then you move to the second part, and you're given normally 2 questions, and you're supposed to write on one of them. And of course, you write a long essay. The time duration is 2 hours, and 2 hours is big. You can do everything in 2 hours. People may have this worry or concern that time is it's not limiting at all. 2 hours, you can travel to another country in 2 hours. Can you imagine? So it's time poverty that we may suffer from. The feeling that time is limited when time is not limited or short. So you need to know how to manage your time. MashaAllah, you're big enough دلوقتي. You've been through exams, so many exams. I don't believe you now have any issues with time management. Okay, طيب. So what do we have in the exam? What are the things that that the exam addresses. The exam addresses the background of the um, what are we doing? We're doing of the Victorian age. The exam, of course, addresses Wuthering Heights, the two chapters. The exam addresses the sign of four, and also the beach at Falesá or of Falesá. So these are the three works that we have in the exam. Do I have to memorize? Do I have to memorize? Can you, Sarah, can I ask you to mute your mic, Malish? Um, do we memorize? Do we expect you to memorize? Absolutely not. You have been exposed to material over and over again. You have the recordings, you've been listening, you have been reading a lot. And it's time that you synthesize whatever you have in mind and you put it there. We don't expect you to memorize things. Just focus and see and check what is required. And based on this requirement, go ahead and answer. Your answers should be sensible in the sense that they should be relevant. I don't ask you about your right hand and you write about your left hand, unless, and this is very important, unless you have nothing to do, nothing to say. And these are very rare cases. Okay? If you have nothing to say at all, write what you can write. But of course, you shouldn't be aiming and hoping for high marks, because your colleague is relevant, has done her homework or his homework, and he knows what he's about. Of course, you cannot compare, but at least you're going to come up with a grade or a mark or two. So again, the idea that you don't leave anything empty, the fact that you have to be relevant unless you have nothing to say or do. Again, we're expecting you to write in an organized and neat way. And sometimes the handwriting is too bad to read. You would wish, and you would wish that the handwriting was better so that you can reward the student. Sometimes it's quite unreadable. You cannot read it at all. I'm sure this is not the strategy of some people, because some people believe that if they scribble and they do like this and it's long and it's big, we just give them a mark, assuming that they are doing a good job in the answer. No, we don't. It doesn't go this way. If I cannot read what you're writing, so obviously I'm going to give you the minimum, not the maximum. What else about the regulations? Write as much as you can. If you're lucky with the question and you think you can talk about it, talk about it, write, no problem. If I ask you, for example, in the short answer part to write only 50 words and you have more, add, no problem, write. So the problem is with writing little rather than with writing more. I would like you to write much. That's fine. And always remember to provide examples for everything, especially with the short answers part. So the short answers part shouldn't be a small paragraph, shouldn't be 2 lines. No. Write, and the examples is going to be to make it big. So examples are very important, and they add or they take away from your mark. If you ask me about the long answers and the essays, I don't expect less than 2 pages in an essay. I don't know how many paragraphs, because I don't know your paragraph style, whether your paragraphs are short or long. That's why I'm talking about having, my measure here would be how many pages you write. So 2 pages would be a minimum in the long essay part. A quarter of a page would be also ideal, would be very good for short answers. Yeah, and keep in mind that you need to provide examples. So the more you write, the better. And if you ask, this is how I see things. Okay, let's go to the things and take them one at a time. Okay, the background. What did we talk about in the background? We spoke about the idea of home and the idea of abroad, and those two ideas cut across the different works that we have done, right? You know by now what home means and its different associations and meanings, security, safety. Um, we said safety on the level of the country and also on the level of London, for example. And whatever is from outside, whether people, whether things, poses danger for the Victorians. So it's home, spoke about home and Victorian readership and why people were interested in reading. Of course, there were no internet or YouTube, so you have to find some time to spend your time after you finish your job. And it could be novels, it could be journals and newspapers. So that's why we have novels, and we used to call them double decker because they are 3 volume kind of thing. And they were also serialized. The fact that they were published in newspapers periodically, every week you have like an episode or a part, and that would account for the suspense that we normally have. Um, okay. So when we talk about the background, it's Victorian values. Spoke about the 3 social reformers, if you still remember. We spoke about Ruskin and Batmore and the third one. Again, what they stress would be the idea of stability and security, traditional values, conformist ideas, um, and then come foreign elements. And with the coming of foreign elements, whether Britain go to those, just give me a second. Okay, I'm back. I'm sorry. Okay. طيب. So what else did we talk about in the background? Any, do you still remember? The background to the Victorian age, of course. No ideas? انتوا نمتوا ولا ايه؟
Yes, doctor, can you repeat what you said?
I was asking about before we leave the background. Do you still remember what we said? I mean, any ideas about the background, the idea of home, and also the idea of abroad, the different Victorian values that you read the novels against? Remember?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that you may think of?
Can I, Victor?
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, Fawzia.
Okay, I think in the Victorian age, there is two kinds of يعني I think home and abroad. Home it's mean warm.
Yeah. Go on.
Home it's mean
جرب
inside,
يوسف.
warm, comfortable inside the house. That's what they focus on in Victorian period. And abroad that's mean something not comfortable, outsider, anything come from outside like the art, salt, I think tea. Uh, that's that's why we can talk about the background or
Right.
the focus thing in the Victorian age.
Right. ممتاز. طب let's move to the first novel, Wuthering Heights. Obviously,
Okay.
when we talk about Wuthering Heights, we have so many things. Again, we're reading the novel. What we're doing is also set against the background. So we still have the idea of home. We also have the idea of abroad, right? So when we talk about conformity, when we talk about people, people following tradition, so this is home. When we have an assault or an attack on those traditions, so obviously this is not home. And you also have this idea that you expect something, and this is home, and then something else happens, which is remember, this is what happened with the frame narrator who comes from the south. He expects the north to be quiet, to be touristic, to be full of scenery and greenery. He went there and he lived in the two houses, especially in Wuthering Heights. The reality was different. He met very dry people, very violent. He saw ghosts. Um, he met the landlord of Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff, and saw how difficult this guy is, how violent. And he read the letters and diaries of the different characters, especially Catherine. So the reality was different. So the expectations would be home. Expectation would be that you're meeting um, the requirements, if you like. You are safe within your house, within your country. Everybody is white. Everybody is Victorian. And then if you have strange ideas, if you have a different treatment, if you have violence, these are elements of abroad in the novel. We spoke too much about the character of Heathcliff, his disputed origins, his violence, and the fact that he is an outsider. We even compared him to figures in literature that like the Byronic hero, remember? He is also a Gothic figure. Gothic, remember when we spoke about the novel as being um, cross generic, where you have so many genres, and one of them is the Gothic, Gothic is when you have violence and when you have bloodshed, you have women who are being dehumanized and brutalized. When you have big houses and those big houses are deserted. When you have strange characters like the character of Heathcliff. So these are elements of the Gothic. Um, Let me try and see if I have questions from past years, and let's try to answer them. I have a question here, and it says, so how does Heathcliff resemble the Gothic villain hero character type in Wuthering Heights? Let me put it in the chat and think about it. Can you see this question?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
see.
So how does Heathcliff resemble the Gothic villain hero character type in Wuthering Heights? So the question is about Heathcliff, right? And we're setting him against characters in literature. What are the characters that we're setting him, that we're saying he resembles, he's like them, is the Gothic villain. So the Gothic and the villain in the Gothic. So we're saying that Heathcliff is a Gothic villain. So how? Okay, so you're going to start off by listen, Thauban, before you answer. I mean, listen to me, and then you may want to write or even come to the mic. So again, we're establishing the fact that Heathcliff is a Gothic figure. Okay, we spoke about the Gothic novel. Okay, the Gothic novel is about having an evil character in it. The Gothic novel with its hero is exactly like the Byronic figure. A very strange kind of character, disputed origins, you don't know where he came from and where he is headed, violent, taking revenge. And women in Gothic novels are treated very inhumanely, in a very brutal way. You need to refer to that. And who is doing that to them? It's the Gothic villain. Villain Sharir, yeah. Okay? So this is, for example, one of the questions. It's about Heathcliff. Let me see if I have like an answer for that. So in Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff is portrayed as proud, courageous, brooding, defiant of laws and conventions, given to violent utterance and action, with flashing basilic eyes. Okay, so as you can see, in the qualities that we're talking about are all negative and evil qualities. So such qualities figure prominently in the hero villain of popular Gothic romance. You can always find them in Gothic romances. So Gothic villains are bent on revenge. They want to take revenge. They are physically courageous, and they have wild and terrific countenance. I mean, their features are wild and terrific. It means that they can uh, um, make you afraid. And this is what we said about Heathcliff. Remember all the pictures that we have seen in the slides. Whenever he is adapted to the movies, he is presented as dark-skinned, right? Um, so you don't, I mean, obviously, virtues, if any, were replaced by viciousness of action. Uh, Obviously, he doesn't have, like I said, known origins, and that would add mystery to his character. So his appearance is described as dark and mysterious with a grim countenance. Again, this is also Gothic. His behavior is erratic and unpredictable, making him a villainous, making his presence very, and you wouldn't feel comfortable while he is around. and he is obsessed with Catherine, and he has this desire for revenge against Henley and Edgar, and he is a vengeful anti-hero, and he has also the supernatural natural qualities and the association with the ghost of Catherine. So again, when you talk about the Gothic, it has an element of the supernatural, element of the whatever is weird, uncanny. So he is rightfully described as a Gothic hero, for example. Are you getting the point? So if I ask you to write about him as a Gothic hero, you start by telling me the qualities of a Gothic hero is. Remember, talking about violence, we're talking about physical prowess. You know, it means that he's physically fit, but his behavior is bad. We're talking about the fact that he is given to whatever is supernatural, and then you apply all of that to the character of Heathcliff. Let me see if we have other questions from here. Okay, this question is about detective novels, which takes us somewhere else. Let's finish. Uh, I'm looking for other questions, everyone.
Doctor,
Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
may I ask a question, please?
Yes. If it's, let's keep to Wuthering Heights until we finish Wuthering Heights.
Yes,
You have,
it's about Wuthering Heights.
yes.
So while studying the novel, I took it like points. So I would like to ask if my points are like correct, or does it mention everything that are in the novels? May I ask what are the? May I tell you the points, and may you tell me if it's correct?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, go ahead.
So what I took and what I made like essays about was the home and abroad of the novel, Heathcliff character, Wuthering Heights and romanticism, and the feature of the uncanny in the novel. Does those points cover all the novel, or is there something missing?
Um, I mean, these are broad lines, but under them you can have so many other things, as you know.
Yes,
Um,
those are only the headlines of them, and in them I mentioned more things in the essays.
yes,
Those
this is what
are
I'm trying to say. Yes.
okay,
These
thank you.
are like you're saying, these are you know, the general themes and ideas. Under them, like I said, come so many things. There is a great deal of of features, and but yeah, but these are normally uh, the most important things in um, um, again, you're talking about only Wuthering Heights, right?
Yes, this is only worth for Wuthering Heights.
Yes. Sorry. Okay. Another interesting short answer question uh, has to do with remember when we said that Wuthering Heights is has a mixture of genres. It has so much. It's a gothic romance. It's a romance. It's
Yeah.
uh, it can also be
Realistic.
epistolary, realistic. So which would make it a hybrid piece of writing. So a question can be how hybrid Wuthering Heights is. So the question is, what is meant by hybrid writing, and how is Wuthering Heights a hybrid work? So hybrid يعني مزيج, because it has different, like we said, we have different genres. So if you have a question like this, what are you going to say?
First, I will identify the concept.
Mhm.
Then I will write what are the genres that Wuthering Heights have.
Okay. طيب. So, so first of all, when you talk about hybridity, hybridity, of course, is taken from biology. فكرة التهجين. Sometimes you have, you know what tahgeen is.
Yeah,
It's when you have
you
an
have to
animal,
plan it
which
out.
is obviously, yes, you guys were all science students, right? So, so this term originally comes from biology and means the offspring of crossbreeding between two different species or types. This is from biology. In literature, بقى, hybrid is a term applied to writing that, like a biological hybrid, shows the characteristics of two or more literary traditions or forms. So we have different genres, in other words. يعني in Wuthering Heights, for example, you have the Gothic and the Realist, right? You have romance. So all the different types of genres that we have included in Wuthering Heights should be mentioned here as an example of hybridity. See, it's an interesting question. And then you have a question on Wuthering Heights as a Gothic novel. See? So, what is meant by Gothic writing, and how is Wuthering Heights a Gothic novel? Okay, so again, you start off by defining what Gothic writing is, and then you talk about the features and the characteristics that make Wuthering Heights a Gothic novel. So, what makes Wuthering Heights a Gothic novel?
Heathcliff's character.
Oh, yes, yeah. The main character is a Gothic anti-hero, or is a Gothic villain, right?
And the atmosphere of terror.
Mumtaz, good.
And the imprisonment of women.
Nice, bravo. So, how are you going to start? Are you going to start with the examples, or you're going to start with a definition of what Gothic novel is? You start with the Gothic and its features, and then you apply to Wuthering Heights. صح كده?
Yeah.
Okay. طيب. So Gothic writing, this is perhaps a good answer. When we say Gothic writing is defined by an anxiety about the unknown, it is characterized by its use of terror and suspense, and it is normally accompanied by and defined by elements of the supernatural. You have this repetition of nightmarish evocation and a catastrophic atmosphere. If you are, yeah, all of this happens in the novel. So the unknown, we talk about the character of Heathcliff and his different color, his contested origins, right? That would bring in an anxiety. What else do we have? We have terror and suspense, of course. We have elements of the supernatural. We have a repetition of nightmarish evocations and realities. So Wuthering Heights is a Gothic novel because of the claustrophobic atmosphere of the house and the and the unexpected behavior of its inhabitants. Heathcliff representing a Gothic villain. Um, um, Always at home, spreading terror and horror. You also have the haunted house, which is the site of frightening things that cannot be explained in terms of the familiar. Catherine and her ghost, and also the doorway of the house is Gothic with its grotesque carving. It's very weird with its twisting staircases. The sitting room shows the idea of the Gothic opening its doors to show domestic chaos. The apparition or the ghost outside Lookwood's window.
Can
Heathcliff
I add something too?
yeah. Yes.
Also, the ghost of Kathy and Heathcliff in the
Yes.
closing scene.
Yes. Heathcliff's vampire gaze. These are all examples of the uncanny and the so whether I'm talking about the uncanny and the Gothic, they are almost similar. Okay. Okay. Another question from the same exam was about Heathcliff as a Byronic hero. It says
Doctor,
describe. Yes,
I'm sorry, but you mean Gothic and Uncanny are similar.
they are
If I
similar,
want to describe,
but not identical. You can also say that the uncanny is part of the Gothic. The Gothic is bigger than the uncanny.
okay, thank you,
Okay,
Doctor.
but they
Yes,
are
thank you so
similar
much.
and this. Yeah. طيب. Like I said, we also have a question from the same exam, and it's also about Heathcliff as being a Byronic hero. Spoke about Byronic. Remember? Um, so Byronic in what sense? What do you think?
As a Gothic villain,
Yeah, when I say that he is a Byronic figure, what do I mean?
he's strange
Mm-hmm.
and violent and what-
Doctor, is it the protagonist who wishes to do good?
To do what?
To do good stuff, but because of
Byron. Now, Byronic is a little bit strange. He has strange behavior. He's more, yani almost villain-like. Remember this? Those are the characters that Lord Byron used to use in his, epics and romances, poetic romances. Okay, let me show you how we can handle a question like this one. Um, um, Perhaps you don't have the answer handy now, but when you give it some thinking, you come up with an answer. You don't have to worry. I mean, this is not new. These are things that you have spoken about and discussed with your teacher, with me. So you don't have to worry, huh? So you're doing a good job. Okay, so let me give you examples of the Byronic. Um, um, Obviously, this element of foreignness. So while foreign in numerous ways in the novel and in other respects, Heathcliff is at home in literature. It means that we have seen him so many times in literature. He is, he comes in a long line of tradition about those kinds of characters. He is erect and handsome. Yeah, despite what we think of him, he is still handsome in his own way. And even the fact that Heathcliff is morose suggests that he might share the characteristics of a hero or indeed a villain. So a villain can be a hero. This is what we're trying to say. Heathcliff as a Byronic hero, uh, uh, um, we perhaps Emily Bronte has taken her inspiration from Byron's The Corsair and Manfred. These are works by Lord Byron. So Heathcliff is also mysterious, and he can be identified with the character types familiar to Victorian readers and from whom extreme behavior was to be expected. So Heathcliff is a recognizable Byronic or Gothic hero villain. I mean, his character and behavior is quite unsettling, and then you give examples of how violent he was and stuff like that. Are you getting the point?
Yes.
Uh, there was also at one point a question about how nature outside the house reflects what happens inside the house. So the inside the house you have violence, especially when we talk about Wuthering Heights, not the other house, not the Grange. So the relationships are very complicated. So this happens also outside the house. I mean, nature reflects those kinds of things. Remember what was around the house? It was stormy all the time. It can be rainy. It can, and even it wasn't a very. It looked like a deserted landscape. This is a question that I have seen over the years. How the outside reflects what happens inside, reflects even what happens within the character or the characters themselves. Okay?
Okay, doctor.
Okay.
Can I say so?
Can you say something? Yes, go ahead, say something.
Yeah, you mean the stormy weather and the very strong weather
استلم
outside.
ورق وعندي مراجعة. Yeah. مين معي؟ يلا go ahead.
The strong weather and the stormy weather, it reflect for the people inside the house. That's why the conflict and the stress inside the house between the people, that the like side effect from the weather outside. That's
Okay,
right.
yeah. But of course, in the exam, you're going to elaborate and write more than that, just that. Somebody wants me to write the question. Um, Hi. Um, what else about Wuthering Heights? Actually, we spoke about so many things in Wuthering Heights. Type. Let's move on to the sign of four. So, what are the most important ideas that we spoke about in the sign of four?
The mutiny, the detective novel,
Mhm.
the significant and insignificant information or evidence.
Yeah,
Um,
so the mutiny as some kind of background and the
and
different perspectives on the mutiny and how the mutiny tells us about the author and what kind of attitudes he has towards the empire. The fact that he was not an imperialist. He wasn't there. He was not an admin like Dr. Watson, the character. Remember when we said that Sherlock Holmes has never been to India? But it seems that Doyle himself is sympathetic towards the imperial project. Of course, when we talk about the mutiny, we talk about foreign elements, and we talk about the effect or the impact of abroad on home. We also spoke about detective novels, and we said that The Sign of Four is a detective novel. We spoke about the elements of a detective novel. What else about The Sign of Four? Let
Doctor,
me, yeah, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we need to write the science deduction as one of the characteristics of the detective novel, an essay or short answer?
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can be part of the characteristics, and it can be a question in and of itself. It can be a short answer question.
Okay. The characteristics are the ability to collect data and differentiate between the important and important details, and remove all the illogical scenarios, and draw a one correct conclusion.
Yes,
Uh,
only one. Yeah, and so
right?
we're basically talking about the elements.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
one element.
Yes. Yes.
Because I read all the slides, and all the slides have a lot of information, so I confused.
That's fine. I mean, it's again, it's one big element of course, um, detective novels. Normally, they use. I mean, the detective, the hero who happens to be a detective, uses this kind of tool, and it is also part of the characteristics in general. The other elements being details, whether they are relevant or irrelevant. You focus on whatever is relevant. Arriving at only one single scenario or conclusion. Yeah. Let me see if I have questions about The Sign of Four. Okay, one question is, Doyle's novel, The Sign of Four, is a detective story that follows the concerted actions of the detective Sherlock Holmes in trying to solve a mysterious case. Discuss how Holmes reflects the Victorian middle class values. Okay. So the first part is one side in one side, and the second part is in another side. Okay. So they started off with you wanting you to perhaps talk about the novel as a detective story, and then you move on and focus on how the main character, Holmes, reflects Victorian values. Let's look at the answer. So you start off by referring to detective novels. You say that detective fiction is a modern form, and it is built on the notion that the world is a rational place that can be understood through the careful application of logic. And this is actually what Holmes does. With detective novels, you have science and you have logic, and science is about logic. You also have this element of individualism when we talk about the detective himself, who solves the crime, and in uh, um, the ability of these kinds of novels to involve us as readers. And again, you talk about the elements, you talk about the data that they gather and how they separate significant details from less significant one, drawing conclusions from the analysis. And then you have Holmes representing the rational scientist who works individually, trying to solve the criminal case. Again, how? By the application of logic, critical thinking, and empirical. These are qualities that were there in the Victorian age: logic, critical thinking, and empirical evidence. And of course, you're going to talk about the Victorian age, the idea of literacy, the fact that people were literate, they knew how to read and write, they were educated, and Holmes was an example of just that. And they were also middle class, with middle class settings, if you still remember their houses and how big. Also, there is this focus on the idea of whatever is domestic and whatever is home. Remember, the novel starts and ends in London. Familiar scenes from London. Um, so this is how you answer a question like that when you focus on Victorian values. Of course, Victorian values of home. And one of them is this idea of literacy, knowing how to read and write. And then if you know how to read and write, and if you go to school, you are going to learn scientific things, and you're going to be logical, you're going to be empirical, تجريبي يعني. You're going to use your mind and critically think about things. Um, Another question is, describe the science of deduction and how does Holmes and the sign of 4 apply it? So we know deduction is when you have you put pieces of evidence together and then you come up with a conclusion. And this is what the novel refers to it. When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbably, must be the truth. So this is obviously the main idea. So you make careful observations and then you rationally analyze the results. And this is actually what Holmes is essentially doing. He understands things. He subject them to observation and to scientific analysis, and he come up with conclusions. And he refers to this as the science of deduction. استنتاج يعني. Okay, so again, if we go through the ideas, we will never end. Again, you might at the beginning feel that the question is strange, or no, when you study it very well, when you give yourself enough time, you invest the right amount of time in the exam, you'll come up with so many ideas. As long as you have done your homework, which you have studied and you have prepared, I don't have to worry. What else about the sign of 4? Okay, right. Let's move on to The Beach of Falesá by Stevenson. So when we talk about Stevenson and The Beach of Falesá, are we talking about home or abroad?
Abroad.
Abroad, yes. Why? Why are we talking about home? Abroad, I'm sorry. Where is the novella set?
In the Pacific.
Yes, which is far away from Britain, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Was this well received by the readers? Victorian readers, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
No. So they're
like
obviously used to novels set in London, novels set in Manchester, in Britain, but not far away. Okay. So it's not only about the setting. There is more also to the novella than just the setting. Even the content is controversial. They didn't agree to. Remember what was the content? What did he talk about? Which Victorians considered an attack on their values. What happens in the novella?
the character travel to another island and get married to a native.
Yeah, getting married to a local from this culture, obviously. So,
Yeah.
according to Victorian values, if you're English, you get married to an English lady, right? Um, Even the ideas that so interracial marriage was not a good thing according to Victorians. What else they consider an assault or an attack on their values? What do you think of the language that the novella was written in or with?
It was
Yeah,
Pidgin language.
yeah. So it was Pidgin, which is this broken type of English. So obviously, the English like their language and they value it. So to see people speaking English in a broken kind of way, this was also something that they were not happy about. Again, what do they expect? So this is an adventure novel or novella. So what do you expect? What do they expect in an adventure novel? They expected to talk about, or to give descriptions of exotic islands, very vivid descriptions, but not to be realistic. Realistic in the sense that the language has to reflect the language of the locals and even the themes. One of the themes is um, reflecting what happens on the island, portraying it as it is, not as it should be. So this was also very strange for them. Um, Remember, even Stevenson at one point was against realism, and his realism is a new type of realism. Realism, according to him, takes away from the entertainment aspect of a novel. So you expect a novel to be entertaining, to amuse us, to give us pleasure. And he was all for that. That's why most of his work was about giving pleasure. So what happened is that he changed that. I mean, he when he went to the Pacific and he started to look at people and how they behave, he wanted to reflect this kind of reality, which is obviously a new kind of reality for him and for the English. So his realism is a new type of realism. Again, he had to reflect that. He was against realism at the beginning. Okay, so this new realism has to do with the language that people are using, Pidgin, the relationships that they have, and the themes, the idea of interracial marriages, and also the daily encounters and the daily concerns of Wiltshire and his wife and what they talk about. So this is a new kind of reality that uh, um, Stevenson is reflecting. When we spoke about the beach of Felisa, we also spoke um, um, about this uh, content contact zone issue or topic, the idea that people meet somewhere and those people are from different cultures, and they try to reach out to each other. Sometimes they are successful, sometimes they are not. So you have all types of encounters. They can be happy, they can reach out successfully, they can be unsuccessful. This concept is very much in the novel. The idea that Falesá is the place where Wiltshire is going to meet other English people, and he's going to also meet natives. And of course, you know what happened with his wife at the beginning, and the idea of false marriage. These are all attempts at establishing relationships and contacts with the other. And sometimes, like I said, you succeed, and sometimes you don't. Um, what else? About the beach of Falesá. Again, the focus again is on the values that the British think they are losing if Stevenson, one of their very important writers, decides to have themes that are not familiar, have themes that are from foreign countries and inspired by foreign cultures, using a language that is not the language that the English are using, not very standardized, and a lot of other more. Okay, this is basically the ideas that I can think of, and of course you're preparing, and you may have other and more ideas as you proceed. So do your, I mean, you have already prepared. If you have any questions, you can always put it on the WhatsApp group, and I'll be more than glad to answer them. So what time is the exam tomorrow?
9:30.
9:30 in the morning, right? Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Mumtaz. Okay, so we're not meeting this week, as you know, because it's MTA week. And when we meet again, inshallah, after this week, of course, it's going to be Ramadan. So I couldn't. What time do we meet? Do we meet at? It's Tuesday. It's Monday at 12, right?
Yeah.
فif it's Monday at 12, it
Yes.
should be المفروض بتتحرك شوية، تبقى كام؟ 12 ولا واحدة ولا ايه؟ ولا هي ولا ايه؟ طيب I'll check the Ramadan
I
schedule
think
and no. Yeah, go ahead.
I think from I think from 12 to 1:30.
So they only reduced the time. خلاص ما فيش مشكلة. I wish you all the best, and I'm sure inshallah you will have يعني a great deal to write about, and I'm sure you're going to write well. And you'll make me proud inshallah. If you have any questions يا جماعة زي ما قلنا, we have the WhatsApp group. Just relax and take it easy, and you have done enough. You have more knowledge than you give yourselves credit for, and أمور هتمشي كويس إن شاء الله. أتمنى لكم التوفيق إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. توفيق إن شاء الله.
Thank you, doctor.
باي باي.